"Please just be quick," she pleaded. The rancher paused, then did the unimaginable Wild West tales. The wind howled across the ridges and valleys, stirring up clouds of fine red dust that coated everything in a thin, copper-colored layer. Eli Calder, a rugged rancher with sun-weathered skin and a wide-brimmed hat, trudged across the open field, inspecting his herd of genetically enhanced cattle. The animals weren't ordinary livestock. They had been engineered to survive in the harsh alien environment, their coats thick enough to withstand scorching days and freezing nights. Eli had spent years learning the rhythms of this strange planet. He knew every hill, every ravine, and every hidden spring. Life on the frontier wasn't easy, but it was predictable. The desert had its dangers, yes, sandstorms, packs of predatory creatures, and the occasional rogue band of scavengers, but Eli trusted his knowledge of the land. And that knowledge had kept him alive. The sun dipped closer to the horizon, and Eli's herd began to huddle together as the evening chill swept across the plains. He whistled sharply, a signal for the animals to stay close, and then turned toward the small homestead he had built near a jagged rock outcrop. It was modest, just a few metal-sided buildings and a water tank, but it had everything he needed. And it had shelter from the sudden storms that could sweep the plains without warning. As he neared the main house, a sudden, piercing shout carried across the wind. Eli froze, his instincts kicking in. The voice was human and it carried desperation. Not the usual traveler's call or a neighbor shouting. This was urgent, almost terrified. "Please, someone help." Eli's hand went to the blaster at his hip, a standard sidearm issued to all frontier settlers. He scanned the horizon, eyes narrowing against the glare of the twin suns. There, stumbling across the rocky plain, was a woman. Her clothing was torn and dusty, and she moved with a combination of exhaustion and fear. She seemed almost afraid to look behind her, but she kept running as if something unseen was chasing her. Eli lowered his weapon slightly and called out, "Hey, slow down. Don't come any closer until I know who you are." The woman didn't stop. She reached him in a few heart-pounding steps and collapsed against the side of his porch. Her chest heaved and dust clung to her sweat-soaked hair. "Please just be quick," she pleaded, her voice shaking. "They're coming. You have to help me." Eli frowned, his mind racing. "Who's coming? Who are you running from?" She looked up at him with wide, terrified eyes. I don't have time to explain. They'll be here any second. You have to hide me, protect me, please." Eli's brow furrowed. He had seen desperation before, but something about the woman's urgency, the raw fear in her eyes, set off alarms in his mind. He had been cautious all his life, and he had learned not to act without thinking. Yet he also knew that ignoring a plea for help could be deadly for her and maybe for others. "All right," he said slowly, lowering the blaster completely. "You can come inside, but you have to tell me everything and fast. Who are they?" The woman nodded, gasping as she pulled herself upright. She didn't speak immediately, only leaning against the doorway for support, catching her breath. Eli led her into the main room, a small area cluttered with supplies, tools, and a sturdy table. He gestured for her to sit while he stood nearby, studying her carefully. "My name is Lyra," she said finally. "I work on the settlement's biolabs. There's something wrong with them. A group of raiders. They've gone beyond anything we've seen. They want something only the labs can provide, and if they find me—" She trailed off, shivering. Eli leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. "Easy now, take a breath. Start from the beginning. What's going on?" Lyra's hands shook as she tried to steady herself. "It's the livestock, the bioengineered herds. They've developed a special DNA, a hybrid that can survive anywhere. The raiders, they want it. They're not just stealing, they're taking over entire settlements to get it. If they catch me, it won't just be me, they'll come for everyone." Eli's mind worked quickly. His herd, his land, his life of quiet, steady survival. None of it mattered if the raiders came for his cattle. He had faced bandits before, but never a group like this. Not with their technology, not with their ruthlessness. "All right," he said finally. "We need a plan. You're not going back out there alone. We'll figure this out." Lyra's eyes welled with tears, but she nodded. "Thank you, I don't know how I survived until now." The wind picked up outside, and Eli went to the window. Across the rocky plains, dust clouds swirled on the horizon. The unmistakable pattern of fast-moving vehicles, or maybe hovercraft, cut across the desert floor. He could see them even from this distance, their shapes dark against the fading light. "They're close," he said, turning back to Lyra. "We don't have much time." Eli moved with the practiced efficiency of someone who had lived on the frontier all his life. He checked the perimeter, barricaded the doors, and prepared weapons. He even released a few of his larger cattle into a hidden corral designed to protect them from predators. His mind was sharp, his senses alert, and though he had faced dangers before, there was something different about this threat. Something intelligent, something organized. Lyra watched him work, awe and fear mixing on her face. "You've done this before," she whispered. Eli smiled faintly, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You survive here long enough, you learn a few things. Now sit tight. Don't make a sound unless I tell you." Night fell quickly on the desert world, the twin moons rising to bathe the plains in pale light. Shadows stretched long and eerie, twisting the landscape into unfamiliar shapes. Eli crouched near the window, watching. He could see them now, small, sleek vehicles moving like predators across the open ground. They were fast, coordinated, almost too fast for anyone to stop with ordinary weapons. And yet, Eli felt something familiar rising in his chest. A challenge. He had faced storms, wild beasts, and the cruelty of lawless men before. He had survived, and he would survive this too. Lyra, still trembling, whispered again, "Do you really think we can stop them?" Eli looked at her, eyes steely. "We don't have to stop them, just long enough to get you safe. After that, we'll deal with the rest." Hours passed, the desert silent except for the wind and the distant hum of approaching machines. Eli and Lyra sat in tense quiet, listening to every sound. Then, just before dawn, a shadow passed the edge of the property. A small drone, its sensors glowing faintly, swept across the yard, searching. Eli tensed, signaling Lyra to stay down. The drone hovered, then darted away. He exhaled slowly, but there was no relief. This was only the beginning. Whatever these raiders were planning, they were smart, organized, and dangerous. Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide. "You're not afraid?" Eli shook his head. "Afraid doesn't help anyone. We plan, we act, we survive. That's what we do out here." As the first rays of the twin suns touched the horizon, painting the plains gold and crimson, Eli made a decision. He wouldn't just hide. He would fight. He would protect his land, his herd, and the woman who had stumbled into his life at the worst possible moment. And deep down, he knew that the quiet frontier life he had built might never be the same again. Because out there, across the endless plains, the danger was coming, and it was relentless. The morning sun rose slowly over the red plains, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. Eli Calder stood at the edge of his homestead, scanning the horizon with narrowed eyes. The distant dust clouds from the night before had vanished, but he knew better than to think the danger had passed. Whatever, or whoever, was coming, it would not give up easily. Lyra sat on a crate near the porch, brushing dust from her torn clothing. Her hands shook slightly as she clutched a small data pad, the only evidence she had of what the raiders were after. She glanced at Eli, whose rugged face was set in hard lines of concentration. "Do you really think they'll stop at the labs?" she asked quietly. Eli shook his head. "No, once they know what's out here, once they realize what they want, they won't stop until they get it. We need to move now." Lyra nodded, swallowing her fear. "Where will we go?" Eli's eyes scanned the plains, settling on a distant canyon that carved a jagged path through the desert. "The canyon," he said. "It's rough terrain, hard for vehicles to maneuver. We can hide there, set traps, and slow them down. It's not perfect, but it's our best chance." By mid-morning, they were on the move. Eli rode his specially modified hoverbike, with Lyra clinging tightly behind him. The twin suns beat down on them, and the wind carried the bitter taste of dust and dry rock. Every few minutes, Eli would glance back, checking for movement on the horizon. "They're fast," Lyra said, her voice trembling. "I can see them, they're gaining." Eli didn't reply immediately. He had seen a lot in his life, but this was new. These were not ordinary raiders. Their vehicles hovered silently, almost as if floating above the ground, and they moved with precision. Each one seemed to anticipate every move the other made. But Eli wasn't worried about their technology. He was counting on his knowledge of the land. "Don't look back too long," he said finally. "It'll only make you panic. Keep your focus ahead. Follow me and do exactly as I say." Lyra nodded, gripping the data pad tightly. She had little understanding of the harshness of frontier life, but she trusted Eli. Somehow, she knew he would not fail her. Not now, not when the stakes were this high. The canyon loomed closer, its jagged cliffs rising like silent sentinels above the plain. Eli slowed as they reached the entrance, scanning every crevice and shadow. He had been here before, studying the natural traps and dead ends that could give him an advantage. With careful guidance, he steered the hoverbike into the rocky terrain, the rumble of the vehicle muted by the uneven ground. Behind them, the dust clouds of the raiders' approach grew larger. The sound of engines, once distant and faint, now became a steady hum in the air. Eli paused briefly at a narrow passage. "This is it," he said. "Once we're in there, they'll have trouble following." "Stick close to me." Lyra swallowed hard. "Do you think it's safe?" Eli gave a small, reassuring smile. "Safe, no, but manageable, and that's what we need." The hoverbike slipped into the canyon, bouncing over rocks and avoiding sudden drops. The walls of stone rose sharply on either side, forcing them into a narrow path where only a few vehicles could follow at once. Eli knew this terrain well. There were natural choke points where he could slow the raiders, buy them time, and perhaps even force some of them to retreat. Hours passed as they moved deeper into the canyon. The sun climbed high overhead, turning the rocks a brilliant red and casting sharp shadows across the path. Every sound made Lyra jump: the echo of a falling rock, the distant rumble of engines, the whisper of the wind through the cliffs. She had never been this far from civilization, and the wildness of the frontier planet was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Finally, they reached a narrow ledge above a steep drop. Eli stopped the hoverbike and dismounted. He motioned for Lyra to stay low as he surveyed the canyon ahead. "This is where we make our stand," he said. "There are natural traps here, rocks we can push, narrow passages we can block. It won't stop them completely, but it'll slow them down enough for us to get an advantage." Lyra watched as he moved with the skill of someone born to the land. He worked quickly, pushing rocks into precarious positions, tying up vines and ropes, and setting improvised alarms with scraps of metal and sensors. Every action was calculated, precise, and deliberate. She realized that Eli's life had been spent surviving in a place where mistakes were deadly. As he finished setting the last trap, a sudden noise echoed through the canyon. A small reconnaissance drone floated into view, its sensors scanning for movement. Eli's eyes narrowed. He reached for a small control panel on his belt and activated a jamming device. The drone flickered, then spun off course, temporarily blinded. "They're clever," Lyra whispered, impressed. Eli nodded without looking at her. "So are we." The canyon remained tense and silent for a few minutes, but the calm didn't last long. The distant hum of the raiders' vehicles grew louder, echoing off the rock walls. Eli motioned for Lyra to stay close as he crouched near a ledge, ready to ambush. His heart pounded, not with fear but with determination. He knew he had to protect this woman, his land, and the herd he had spent years nurturing. The first raider vehicle appeared at the canyon entrance, hovering just above the rocky ground. Eli waited, watching their movements carefully. They were precise, cautious, and intelligent, more than mere thieves or bandits. They had planned this carefully, and Eli realized they would not stop easily. With a quiet signal, he triggered the first trap. A massive rock dislodged from above, crashing down to block part of the narrow passage. The raider vehicles screeched to a halt, engines whining as they adjusted their path. The delay was enough for Eli and Lyra to slip deeper into the canyon. "This is just the beginning," Eli said quietly. "We can slow them, but we can't stop them forever. We need to keep moving, keep ahead." Hours turned into a tense, grueling chase. Eli led Lyra through twisting paths, hidden tunnels, and rocky overhangs that gave them cover. Every few miles, they paused to check their traps, adjust their path, and ensure the raiders had not found an advantage. Lyra was exhausted, but she kept going. Each time she thought she couldn't continue, Eli's steady presence gave her courage. She had never seen someone so calm under pressure, so confident in the face of danger. It was awe-inspiring and terrifying. Finally, they reached a small plateau overlooking a wide canyon floor. Eli parked the hoverbike behind a natural rock outcrop and motioned for Lyra to follow. "We have a little time to rest," he said, "and we need to plan the next move. They'll be here soon." Lyra sank to the ground, breathing heavily. "I can't believe you're still calm," she said. "I'm terrified, and you just keep thinking." Eli smiled faintly. "Fear doesn't solve anything. We act, we survive, and we adapt. That's what humans do." Lyra looked out over the canyon, seeing the dust clouds of the raiders approach in the distance. They were relentless, intelligent, and dangerous, but Eli had something they didn't: knowledge, courage, and a deep understanding of the land. "We have to make it through this," she whispered. "If we don't, everything is lost." Eli nodded. "We will, one step at a time. We survive today and we fight tomorrow. That's all we can do." As the sun dipped toward the horizon again, casting long shadows across the canyon, Eli and Lyra prepared for the next phase of their journey. They were running, hiding, and fighting in a world that was harsh, unforgiving, and unpredictable, but they were human. And humans, Eli knew, had a way of surviving against impossible odds. The first night in the canyon was tense and silent. The wind whispered through the rocks, carrying the faint hum of distant engines. Every sound made Lyra's heart race. But Eli remained calm, checking traps, guiding her, and reminding her to stay focused. By dawn, they were ready to move again, deeper into the canyon. The raiders were close behind, but Eli had a plan. He had no illusions. It would be difficult, dangerous, and exhausting. But he had one advantage that the raiders did not: the knowledge, skill, and resilience that came from living, surviving, and thriving on the frontier. And that would make all the difference. The canyon walls rose steep and jagged on either side, blocking the sun's harsh glare and turning the landscape into a maze of shadows and stone. Eli Calder and Lyra moved cautiously along the narrow path, their hoverbike left behind in a hidden alcove. Dust hung thick in the air from the distant engines of the raiders, now growing louder, closer, and more organized. Eli paused at a junction in the canyon. From here, the path split into two narrow passes, one leading deeper into the labyrinth of rocks, the other winding toward a small plateau where Eli had once hidden a supply cache. He crouched low, scanning the terrain with sharp, calculating eyes. "We have to make a choice here," he said, his voice quiet but firm. Lyra glanced at him, her eyes wide. "A choice? What do you mean?" Eli gestured toward the narrow passes. "One way is quicker but dangerous, more open, easier for them to track us. The other is slower but gives us more control. We can set traps, slow them down, and maybe get a small advantage, but it will take time." Lyra swallowed hard. She trusted him completely, yet the tension in the air made it hard to breathe. "We don't have time," she said. "They're almost here. Please just be quick." Eli's jaw tightened. Her words cut deep, not because she doubted him, but because she was scared, and that fear weighed on him. He understood it, it was natural, but he also knew the cost of acting too quickly without thinking. Every second mattered, and every mistake could be fatal. He knelt briefly to examine the rocky ground, running his fingers along cracks and loose stones. He could feel the natural weaknesses, the places where a small shift could create obstacles, and where a falling rock could block a narrow passage. Then he straightened and looked at Lyra. "We'll take the slower path," he decided. "It's safer for now, and it gives us a chance to fight back if we have to." Lyra nodded, though worry clouded her face. I don't want anyone to get hurt, especially you." Eli gave her a faint smile. "Don't worry about me. Focus on staying alive. That's your job right now." As they moved deeper into the canyon, Eli began preparing more than just traps. He planned contingencies. Every boulder, every overhang, and every crevice became part of his strategy. He marked weak points in the rock for potential slides, tied ropes for quick barricades, and set small, improvised alarms that would alert them if the raiders tried to flank from above. Lyra watched in awe. She had never seen anyone so calm, so deliberate in the face of imminent danger. "How do you do it?" she whispered. Eli glanced at her briefly. "Experience. You learn that fear doesn't help you. Thinking, observing, and adapting, that's what keeps you alive. Humans are clever. We survive when others might give up." Hours passed. The heat of the day rose, making the canyon walls shimmer and warp in the sunlight. Eli and Lyra moved carefully, stepping over jagged rocks and crouching under low-hanging cliffs. Every sound echoed strangely, making the distance of the raiders' approach impossible to judge. Dust clouds stirred on the far horizon, moving closer like silent predators tracking them. Finally, they reached a natural choke point, a narrow passage just wide enough for two vehicles to pass side by side. Eli stopped, crouching low and pressing a hand against the cool stone. "This is it," he said. "We can make a stand here. I'll set the first trap, then we'll see how they react." Lyra's eyes widened. "A stand? You mean fight them?" Eli shook his head. "Not fight them head-on. We slow them, confuse them, and give ourselves time. That's all we need, time." He worked quickly, pushing rocks into precarious positions, creating false pathways and setting loose debris that would topple at the first touch of the raiders' vehicles. Every movement was precise, calculated, and deliberate. Lyra helped where she could, placing sensors and tying ropes, but she trusted Eli to lead. The first sign of the raiders appeared as a shadow at the canyon entrance. A single scout vehicle hovered forward, its sensors scanning for movement. Eli crouched low, waiting. Then, with a small gesture, he triggered the first trap. A massive rock dislodged from above, crashing into the narrow passage with a deafening roar. The scout vehicle screeched and skidded to a halt, sensors spinning wildly. Eli and Lyra slipped deeper into the canyon, hearts pounding but movement steady. The delay, though small, was enough to buy them time, a precious commodity in the face of relentless pursuers. "They're clever," Lyra whispered, amazed. Eli nodded. "So are we. That's why we survive." The raiders responded quickly, splitting their forces. Some moved to flank from higher ledges, while others tried to push through the canyon floor. Eli anticipated their moves. He had studied the terrain, memorized every weak point, and knew where to strike. Hours of tense maneuvering followed. Eli and Lyra used every trick at their disposal, dropping rocks, triggering small collapses, and even using the canyon's natural curves to hide. Each moment was a test of skill, patience, and nerve. But as the day wore on, Eli realized something troubling. The raiders weren't just after Lyra, they were after something bigger, something he couldn't see yet. Their movements were precise, almost coordinated, and they seemed to anticipate the traps as if they had prior knowledge of the terrain. "They know the canyon," Eli muttered, scanning the walls. "They've been here before, or someone has told them what to expect." Lyra's face went pale. "Does that mean we're not going to stop them?" Eli crouched beside her, placing a firm hand on her shoulder. "We can stop them, we just need the right move, and sometimes to win we have to take a risk." Lyra looked at him, unsure. A risk. What kind of risk? Eli's gaze hardened. We might have to use my herd as part of the plan, a distraction to draw them into a place we control. It's dangerous, but it could work. It might be the only way to protect the settlement and the labs. Lyra's eyes widened. Your herd. But they're alive, you ca. Eli shook his head. It's not about hurting them, it's about guiding them. We can use their instincts, their movement, to slow the raiders down. I know my animals, they'll respond to my signals. If we do it right, no one gets hurt and we gain the advantage. Lyra bit her lip, fear and awe mingling on her face. I don't know if I can do this, if we can do this. Eli placed a hand on her arm. You can, we can. Humans are clever, we survive because we adapt. And right now, this is the only way. The sound of engines grew louder, echoing through the canyon walls. The raiders were close, more aggressive now, and they were beginning to understand the traps. Eli and Lyra moved quickly, setting the final preparations for the herd distraction. He whistled sharply, and the animals responded, moving into position behind the rocks and cliffs, ready to follow his lead. Lyra watched, tense but trusting, as Eli guided each step. The plan was dangerous, yes, but it was the only chance they had to survive, and to protect countless others who depended on the frontier settlement. As the first raider vehicles appeared at the canyon entrance again, Eli crouched low, signaling the herd forward. The animals surged, moving with surprising speed and precision, guided by Eli's commands. Rocks tumbled, sensors triggered, and the canyon became a controlled chaos designed to confuse the attackers. Lyra felt her heart race. This was it, the moment of choice, the test of courage and ingenuity. She followed Eli's lead, helping where she could, and marveled at the calm focus he maintained despite the danger surrounding them. The raiders reacted as expected, caught off guard by the coordinated movement of the herd. Vehicles skidded and spun, their sensors overwhelmed by the chaos. Eli moved swiftly, directing the animals, adjusting traps, and ensuring that Lyra remained safe. For a moment the canyon echoed with the sounds of controlled destruction, rocks falling, engines whining, and the low roar of the herd moving through the narrow passages. And in the midst of it, Eli and Lyra held steady, guiding every movement, calculating every risk. When the dust settled, Eli crouched behind a rock, wiping sweat from his brow. Lyra looked at him, wide-eyed. We did it," she whispered. Eli nodded slowly. "For now, but this is just the beginning. The raiders will learn, they'll come back. And next time we need to be ready." Lyra shivered, a mixture of relief and fear washing over her. I never knew humans could do this. I never realized we're capable of so much." Eli gave her a small, tired smile. "That's what being human is about. We survive. We adapt. We fight when we have to, and we protect what matters most. And right now, that's what keeps us alive." As the sun dipped low again, casting the canyon in shadows and gold, Eli and Lyra took a brief moment to rest. The path ahead was uncertain, the danger far from over, but they had made a choice, and that choice had bought them time. Time to survive, time to fight another day. And in that moment, Lyra understood something she had never known before. Humans, even ordinary ones like Eli Calder, could accomplish the unimaginable. The canyon grew darker as the twin suns sank toward the horizon, leaving only a faint glow along the jagged rocks. Shadows stretched across the narrow paths, hiding the rough edges of the cliffs and the twisted, rocky terrain. Eli Calder and Lyra crouched behind a large boulder, their breath steady despite the tension in the air. The raiders were close now, their engines humming through the canyon like the call of a predator. Eli's eyes swept over the carefully prepared paths and traps. Rocks were balanced in precarious positions, ropes tied to swing across narrow gaps, and small sensors hidden in the dust to detect any movement. His herd had been guided into a hidden alcove, positioned perfectly to act when the moment came. He glanced at Lyra, who clutched the small data pad tightly, her knuckles white with fear. "This is it," Eli whispered. Once we start, there's no turning back. Are you ready? Lyra nodded, though her voice trembled. I think so, but what exactly do we do? Eli gave her a calm, reassuring look. We let them think they're in control. They'll move into the canyon, and that's when the herd and the traps do the work. Watch and follow my lead. For a moment, silence fell over the canyon. Even the wind seemed to pause, as if holding its breath. Then, distant lights flickered along the entrance, raiders moving into position, scanning for movement, unaware of the plan awaiting them. Eli crouched lower and activated a small device on his belt. A soft, low hum began, almost inaudible at first, but it pulsed through the rocks and alerted the herd to move. The genetically enhanced animals, accustomed to Eli's commands and the rhythms of the land, responded instantly. They surged forward, their movement coordinated and precise. Dust flew into the air as they advanced toward the canyon floor. The first raider vehicles appeared at the canyon entrance. Engines whining, they tried to navigate the narrow path, but Eli's traps were ready. Rocks toppled from above, cutting off narrow passages. Some vehicles skidded into the dust, while others struggled to avoid the swinging ropes and strategically placed obstacles. The canyon erupted into a controlled chaos, a test of patience, intelligence, and skill. Lyra watched in awe, fear mingling with amazement. "It's incredible," she whispered. "How are you doing this?" Eli moved along the canyon floor, signaling the herd, adjusting traps and keeping his eyes on every movement. "Focus, observe, adapt. Humans survive by thinking, not just fighting. That's what we're doing." The raiders, intelligent and relentless, tried to adjust. They split into smaller teams, attempting to flank from higher ledges and narrow crevices. But Eli had anticipated this. Rocks were balanced to fall at the slightest disturbance, ropes swung unexpectedly across narrow paths, and dust alarms signaled every movement. The canyon itself became a weapon in his hands. For hours, the battle of strategy unfolded. Eli and Lyra moved quietly, guiding the herd and triggering traps. Each time a raider vehicle stumbled or spun out of control, Eli felt a quiet satisfaction, but he did not relax. The raiders were intelligent and they would learn. They had technology and perhaps even prior knowledge of the canyon's layout. And then, just when Eli thought they might gain the upper hand, a loud roar echoed through the canyon. A larger raider vehicle, heavily armored and faster than the rest, appeared at the narrow passage ahead. It barreled forward, pushing smaller vehicles aside, and aimed straight for the herd. Eli's heart pounded. He had anticipated many threats, but the size and speed of this vehicle were beyond anything he had faced before. He whistled sharply, signaling the herd to change direction. The animals responded immediately, weaving through the canyon, drawing the raiders toward a narrow ledge he had prepared. Lyra gasped. "That's too dangerous, they'll get crushed." Eli shook his head. "No, they know how to move. Watch." The herd surged along the ledge, moving precisely along the path Eli had studied for years. The raider vehicle followed, unable to adjust quickly enough. As it entered the narrow corridor, Eli triggered a rock slide above. Massive boulders tumbled down, creating a wall behind the raiders and leaving them trapped. Dust filled the air and the roar of engines echoed helplessly against the canyon walls. Lyra's eyes widened. You did it," she whispered. Eli didn't answer. He moved quickly, checking the canyon for any remaining threats. A few raiders had escaped to higher ledges, attempting to flank, but Eli had already prepared for this. Rocks were ready to fall, and ropes and pulleys could block any narrow path they tried. Every move they made was countered by his preparation and knowledge of the land. Hours passed in a tense, exhausting effort. Eli and Lyra worked tirelessly, guiding the herd, adjusting traps, and monitoring the raiders' movements. The canyon, once quiet and still, was now a battlefield of intelligence, strategy, and controlled chaos. At one point, a small group of raiders tried to break through a narrow side passage. Eli moved swiftly, dropping a boulder and using the herd's movement to create confusion. The raiders were forced to retreat, slipping and sliding along the rocky path, unable to find a clear route. Lyra, exhausted but focused, whispered in awe, "I never imagined humans could do this. We're so clever." Eli smiled faintly, sweat on his brow. "That's why we survive. We think, we plan, and we adapt. Technology alone doesn't win the day. Human skill and courage do." As night fell, the canyon grew dark, and the last light of the twin suns faded behind the jagged cliffs. The raiders, trapped, confused, and overwhelmed, were forced to retreat or risk losing everything. Eli crouched behind a boulder, guiding the last movements of the herd, signaling Lyra to stay low and safe. Finally, after hours of tense maneuvering, the canyon fell silent. The raiders had retreated, leaving only the dust and rocks in their wake. Eli and Lyra emerged from behind the boulders, breathing heavily but alive. The herd, calm and obedient, followed them quietly. Lyra looked at Eli, eyes wide with disbelief and admiration. We did it." "I can't believe it." Eli gave a small, tired smile. "We did what we had to do. That's what humans do. We survive, we protect, and we fight when we must." Lyra studied him, the realization sinking in. You're incredible. How did you think of all that?" Eli shrugged, humble but firm. "Experience, knowledge of the land, and the understanding that humans are clever. We adapt, we survive. That's all it takes." The night was quiet now, the canyon still except for the soft rustle of wind and the low hum of distant creatures. Eli and Lyra guided the herd to a hidden alcove where they would rest and recover. The danger was not completely gone. The raiders would return, but for now they had won a critical victory. Lyra felt a sense of awe and respect for Eli, a deep understanding of what it meant to be human. Not just strong or fast, but clever, adaptable, and courageous. In the face of overwhelming danger, he had used every skill, every ounce of knowledge, and every bit of courage to protect them both. Eli watched the stars emerge over the canyon walls, twin moons casting silver light on the rocky landscape. He knew the raiders would return, smarter and more determined. But he also knew this: humans, ordinary humans, could accomplish the extraordinary when they relied on their minds, their courage, and their ingenuity. Lyra, seated beside him, whispered softly, "I'll never forget this. I'll never forget what humans can do." Eli nodded, a quiet satisfaction in his eyes. "And you'll carry that knowledge. That's how we survive, by learning, adapting, and protecting what matters most." Today, the canyon, the herd, and we survived because of that. Tomorrow, we'll be ready for whatever comes next. For the first time since the chaos began, the two of them felt a moment of calm. They had faced an unimaginable challenge and come out victorious. They had survived by relying on human skill, courage, and ingenuity. And though the journey was far from over, they now knew that humans, ordinary humans like Eli Calder, could accomplish the extraordinary even in the harshest, most unforgiving worlds. The night deepened, the canyon quiet and still, as Eli and Lyra rested and planned for what would come next. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. And for the first time, Lyra understood what it truly meant to be human. The canyon lay quiet under the twin moons, its jagged rocks casting long, silver shadows across the narrow paths. Eli Calder and Lyra sat near the herd, finally taking a moment to rest. The events of the past 2 days had left them both exhausted, yet alive, and in that survival was a small victory. The raiders had been forced to retreat, their vehicles disabled or trapped, but Eli knew they would return. They were clever, relentless, and now humiliated. Lyra sat beside him, brushing dust and sweat from her hair. Her eyes were wide, filled with awe and gratitude. "I still can't believe it," she whispered. You did all of this, alone, and the herd." Eli shook his head with a tired smile. "Alone, not really. We did it together. The herd helped, and you helped too. Humans survive because we adapt and work together. That's what makes us strong. Lyra looked at him, trying to understand. I never realized humans could be like this. Clever, brave, resourceful. It's not just strength or speed, is it? Eli nodded. No, strength helps, but thinking helps more. Observing, planning, adapting, those are the things that save lives. That's what makes us human. The night was calm, the desert cool now, but Eli's mind was already racing. He knew the raiders were not finished. They would regroup, repair their vehicles, and return in greater numbers. The settlement, the labs, and the people living there would still be in danger. He could not stay hidden. He had to act before the raiders returned stronger and smarter. We can't wait for them to come back, Eli said, standing and brushing off his clothes. We need to go back to the settlement and warn the others. If we prepare properly, we can stop them for good. Lyra hesitated. Go back now, but they're out there. They'll catch us. Eli crouched beside her and placed a hand on her shoulder. The canyon helped us survive this long, but hiding isn't enough. Humans survive because we act. We plan, we fight, and we protect what matters. That's what we're going to do. By dawn, they were moving again. Eli led the herd through hidden paths, keeping them out of sight from the scattered raiders. He had spent years learning the terrain of the canyon and the surrounding plains. Every twist, every ledge, every hidden path became their advantage. The raiders, unfamiliar with the land, could not follow them easily. Hours later, the settlement appeared on the horizon, a small cluster of metal buildings and domed greenhouses surrounded by fences. Smoke from cooking fires and the movement of settlers gave life to the otherwise quiet desert. Eli and Lyra approached cautiously, ensuring that no raiders were near. Once they reached the settlement, Eli immediately began organizing defenses. He spoke with the settlement leaders, sharing everything he knew about the raiders' technology, tactics, and intentions. The settlers listened in awe, impressed by his knowledge of the canyon and the traps he had used. His actions had saved lives already, and his guidance could save many more. Lyra, still in shock, helped relay information from the labs. They want the livestock DNA, she explained to the council. It's not just theft, they'll take over the labs and the settlement if they get it. We have to stop them. Eli nodded. We can if we prepare. We have knowledge, skill, and the land on our side. Humans survive because we think ahead, and that's what we'll do now. For the next several days, the settlement became a hub of activity. Eli trained the settlers in basic survival tactics, teaching them how to use the terrain to their advantage. They set up traps along likely approaches, reinforced walls, and created hidden escape routes. The herd was moved to a secure enclosure, ready to act as a distraction if necessary. Lyra worked tirelessly alongside Eli, her admiration growing with every decision he made. You're amazing, she said quietly one evening as they checked a newly set trap. I've never seen anyone handle danger like this. You think ahead of everyone. Eli shrugged, modest but firm. Experience, knowledge, and the understanding that humans are clever. That's why we survive. The days passed slowly, each one filled with preparation, anticipation, and tension. Settlers grew stronger, more confident, and more capable. Under Eli's guidance, they learned to think strategically, to anticipate danger, and to act as a unit. The human spirit, once quiet and cautious, now shone brightly in the face of the approaching threat. And then, on the fifth day, the dust clouds appeared on the horizon. The raiders had returned, more numerous and aggressive than before. Their vehicles glinted under the twin suns, engines roaring, sensors scanning for movement. Eli stood at the edge of the settlement, surveying the approaching threat. They're coming, Lyra whispered. Eli nodded, calm but alert. And we're ready. The first wave of raiders reached the outer fences. The settlers, guided by Eli's strategies, moved swiftly. Traps were triggered, barricades blocked vehicles, and the herd was released in a coordinated surge, drawing raiders into controlled chaos. Rocks tumbled, ropes swung, and the canyon's knowledge, transferred to the settlement's layout, gave the humans an advantage. The raiders were surprised. They had expected easy targets, but what they found instead was a community prepared, thinking, and acting together. Every attempt to push forward was met with resistance. Vehicles were stalled, sensors confused, and raiders forced to retreat or risk becoming trapped themselves. Eli moved among the settlers, directing movements, signaling the herd, and adjusting tactics in real time. Lyra followed closely, coordinating with the labs and ensuring the DNA samples were secure. It was a battle of intelligence, strategy, and resilience, not just strength. Hours passed in tense maneuvering. The raiders tried flanking maneuvers, splitting into smaller groups, but every move was anticipated by the humans. Every risk was countered by planning, observation, and quick action. The settlement, once vulnerable, now stood strong. Finally, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the last raider vehicles retreated, damaged, confused, and unable to continue. The humans had won, not through sheer force, but through ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. Eli stood at the center of the settlement, watching the retreating dust clouds, his heart steady. Lyra approached him, relief and admiration shining in her eyes. We did it. They're gone. We won." Eli nodded, a small, satisfied smile on his face. "Yes, we won. Because humans survive. We think, we adapt, we protect what matters, and that's what makes us strong." The settlers began repairing damage, tending to the herd, and celebrating quietly. The labs were secure, and the community had learned a valuable lesson. Humans, though not the strongest or fastest, could accomplish the extraordinary when they relied on courage, ingenuity, and unity. Lyra looked at Eli, understanding dawning on her. "I see now. It's not just strength. It's thinking, planning, and working together. That's what makes humans extraordinary." Eli nodded. "Exactly. That's what frontier life teaches you, and that's what survival teaches you. Humans are capable of amazing things when we put our minds and hearts into it." The night settled over the desert planet, twin moons casting silver light over the settlement. Eli and Lyra stood at the edge, watching the herd move calmly, the fires of the settlement burning steadily, and the quiet of the desert returning. For the first time in days, they felt true peace. The immediate danger had passed, but the lessons remained. Humans, ordinary and seemingly vulnerable, had proven that courage, intelligence, and unity could overcome even the most formidable threats. Eli placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "Remember this. Humans survive because we act, think, and adapt. We protect what matters most. And that is why we endure no matter what challenges come." Lyra smiled, understanding now the depth of his words. "I'll never forget this. I'll carry this knowledge wherever I go." Eli nodded, looking out over the horizon. The desert was quiet, the settlement safe, and the future uncertain. But for the first time, it felt full of hope. Humans had faced impossible odds, acted with courage and intelligence, and emerged victorious. And in that victory lay the true heart of humanity: clever, resilient, and capable of the unimaginable. The story of Eli Calder, Lyra, and the frontier settlement would be remembered, not because of power, technology, or weapons, but because humans had relied on what made them truly strong: their minds, their hearts, and their unbreakable spirit. The stars twinkled above the desert plains, twin moons casting gentle light, and the humans of the settlement rested, prepared for whatever challenges awaited, but confident, above all, in themselves. Because humans, ordinary as they might seem, had once again proven that no force, no matter how advanced, could overcome ingenuity, courage, and unity. And that was the true triumph of the frontier.